Well, I've only made two decisions for myself in my whole life. To leave home when I was 22 and to leave England when I was 72. And both were like stepping off a cliff in the dark and going down. But I survived.
Hello and welcome to Artifacts, a living archive dedicated to preserving the first-person stories of queer, avant-garde, and underground culture, told by those who lived it. Today's interview is part of our series Gender Benders, showcasing the groundbreaking icons who transcended the boundaries of traditional gender and identity. In this episode, we hear from Quentin Crisp. From the 1920s until the end of his life, he defied the norms of how to dress and courageously created his own flamboyant lifestyle. From artist model to best-selling author of The Naked Civil Servant, Crisp turned his life into performance, championing self-invention, wit, and radical visibility. At 72, he left London for New York, where he became a public raconteur and LGBTQ+ icon. Sometimes celebrated, sometimes controversial, always unforgettable. This interview was conducted in 1999, a few months before Quentin's passing at the age of 90.
In England, the word Bohemian existed. It's now gone out of fashion. I take it that a Bohemian is someone without prejudices and without roots. And we sat in the cafes in what they called Fitzrovia, which is a joking name for a district where there was the Fitzroy Tavern, which was a Bohemian tavern. And everyone went there and talked. And we talked for hours in pubs and in cafes. In those days, you could sit in cafes for the whole day drinking one cup of coffee. And when the cafe filled up and the proprietor tired of the regulars who'd been there for hours, he flicked their bare arms with a wet tea towel and said, "It's clear off, you've been here long enough." And they left with no resentment at all. Now you couldn't do that, people would sue you. But they knew they'd been there long enough and they went away and put on a dress with sleeves and came back, or went to another cafe and sat there. And we talked, and the wonderful thing was that however long we talked, there was no gossip. Now in Chelsea, which was full of barren women who had nothing better to do but go to the cafes, the talk was almost all gossip. But no one sat in the cafes in Fitzrovia and said, "You see that girl over there, with the man with the red jumper? She used to be with the man in the hat, but he's nowhere now. I don't know what happened to him." And they never said anything like that. They discussed ideas. Some political discussion, because they were all communists. And I said that I never voted. And they were shocked by this, that anyone could have a vote and not use it. But of course, I don't believe in politics. I think politics are the art of making the inevitable appear to be a matter of wise human choice. I think it probably ended with the war. When the war came to an end, everyone had to sort of pull themselves together and go back to real life. Real life was suspended. The streets were pitch dark when it was night. And in the day, there were people doing nothing because there were no jobs. It was a sort of special time while the war was on, and that was what the Bohemians needed. They then could sit around all day and do nothing.
When was your first sexual experience?
Oh, I should think I was about 19 or 20 when I started to walk about the West End without my parents and wearing makeup. I met various people, and I should think I had very sort of snatch and grab sexual experience. In fact, I think the only words of love that I've ever heard are the words spoken by anyone who had my elbow in his grip and came to a dark doorway and said, "This will do." That's the answer. My life was a question of gender. I didn't want to be a man. I didn't want to compete with men. I didn't want to be involved in sport, which men are interested in pathologically. I mean, in England there's a game called soccer, which is the stupidest game you can imagine. Everybody has two hands, which they use. You're not allowed to use them in soccer. So, I mean, you might just well have a game in which you propel the ball with your nose. I mean, it's absolutely ludicrous. Well, you see, people say to me, "When did you come out?" And I say, I never came out because I was never in. When I was a child, I waltzed around the house in clothes that I'd found in an attic belonging to my mother or my grandmother, saying, "Today I am a beautiful princess." What my parents thought, I can't imagine. But I never realized that I was ludicrous. Although my brothers and my sister laughed at me all day long, I thought it was just them. And I've never changed. I realize I've always lived in a dream in which I was a woman. And my appearance is not an endeavor to look unlike other people. It's an endeavor to look more like myself than nature had made me. You see, the difference between gay men and lesbians is that gay men want to be happy. Lesbians only want to be right.
What term do you feel most comfortable with in talking about yourself in terms of your sexual orientation? Gay, homosexual, blah blah. What words do you like?
I don't really mind. The word queer was popular when I was young. I accepted it. It was only a word. What did it matter? Now everyone's so sensitive. You can't say normal because people say, "I'm not abnormal." Well, of course they're abnormal. Most people are not homosexual, so they're abnormal. What does it matter? Well, of course, when I was young, the world was very feminine. The words movie star meant a woman. All except perhaps for Valentino. I'm not suggesting he was kinky, but his appeal was very feminine. It was cruel, capricious, dark. I mean, if you see the first few minutes of The Four Horsemen, they are now so ludicrous. The Spanish hat across the eyes, the cigarette. He taps the tango dancer on the shoulder and he disappears. And he takes the woman by the waist and she bends back till her hair touches the floor. I mean, it was all magical, mysterious, and that's what the appeal of women was. And now I've understood it, because beauty is not a woman, it's a man's idea of a woman. And in the movie industry, during the reign of Mr. Mayer, it was a Jew's idea of an Aryan woman. You marry some nice Jewish girl, that means that you've turned out to marry your mother. But you long for a great, blonde, Nordic horse who's going to put her foot in your face.
Oh, I was asking about drag and gender, how it's different than... So I mean, clearly, you're not interested in drag.
No, I didn't want to be a drag. I didn't want to be a figure of fun. You see, the contempt for women is so ingrained that people don't notice it. When a man dresses as a woman, everybody laughs because he's degraded himself. When a woman dresses as a man, nobody laughs. When Marlene Dietrich appeared as a petty officer in the Cafe of Seven Sinners, mind you, she's never looked so feminine, but nobody laughed. She was wonderful. That's because when she's appearing as a man, she has ennobled herself. But nobody would admit that, but it must be true because it always happens. If one group of people envies another, given half a chance, it will adopt the worst characteristics of the group it envies. Drag queens are people who envy women, but they don't want to be nice women. They want to be vain, bitchy women. And a drag act is the most wounding act you can imagine. I can't remember what they said. I can't remember whether they said anything. But you see, the only thing you can't see in the television play of my life, presumably because it would have cost too much, was the crowds. The crowds followed me. They filled the streets so the traffic couldn't go by. And the police would fight their way through the crowds and say to me, "You again, go home. It isn't anything. Go away, go home." And very insulting. And because they couldn't, you see, half the people don't know what they're looking at. They're seeing there's a crowd over there and they want to get at it, but they can't really see. But I can't understand it. I mean, I didn't want other people to wear makeup. I wore makeup. I wore perfectly ordinary clothes, like these. My clothes were bought for me by my mother's in a boy's outfitter. I couldn't wear anything odd. Why did it cause such a stir? But it did. You see, the police were very much against homosexuality. When the boys were had up and taken into court, their manner got them sent to jail. They had only to say, "It was like this, Your Honor, 6 months." Not really, I just knew that that was my fate, and I bore it. I was terrified, of course, but because if one of them had hit me or touched me, the whole thing would have been over. They would have trampled me to death. You had to will them not to touch you. No, now I have no fear because in America everybody is my friend. New Yorkers try to frighten you with New York. They're always saying, "I shouldn't go down there, that's a bad street." Well, I've walked alone about the Lower East Side, than which you can get no lower. Not after midnight, but up till midnight, and nothing's ever happened to me. I've never been mugged. I don't think there's anything I could give them. If they did mug me, I have almost no money. But no, I feel safe in New York, and I never felt safe in England. I came to America when I was 72. I mean, it was a terrible risk. I couldn't apply for a job at the age of 72, but I've never worked in the 18 years that I've lived in America. I've lived like Mademoiselle Dubois, on the kindness of strangers. I came first to America at the invitation of Mr. Bennett, who wanted to make my life story into a musical, which I would have loved. But my agent said it was not to be, and it was never done. And then, but once I'd seen New York, I wanted it. You see, I've always been American in my heart, ever since my mother took me to the cinema. My mother took me to the pictures in a spirit of ostentatious condescension. The movies were for servant girls. People with any taste went to the theatre. But when I began to gibber and twitch at the sight of New York on the screen, my mother explained that what went on up there was vastly different from what happened in real life. And she was wrong, because everyone who comes from London to New York and goes back says one thing first. It's more like the movies than you'd ever dream. And it is. They really do bring the dining room chairs out onto the pavement and sit there mopping their necks with Kleenex and saying, it isn't the heat, it's the humidity. Just as they do in the movies. If I were God, the world would be like America. It would have huge cities. I don't really like the countryside. I would pave over the whole of North America. And preferably have a glass roof like a vast Grand Central Station. I don't like nature. And we would all live there and we would all be happy like Americans. We would be nice to one another. And we would talk to one another. You see, wherever you go in America, you feel you're welcome. Everybody is your friend in America. That's the most wonderful thing of all. In England, nobody is your friend. An Englishman met me here and said, you're the one who lives here permanently now, aren't you? And I said, yes. Well, why? And I said, because everywhere I go, everybody talks to me. And he said, I can't think of anything worse. The English are angry at being talked to. They tell you terrible stories about making a long journey by train and getting stuck with someone who would tell them the story of their lives. But I think it's wonderful. I sat in a train once with a woman who told me the story of her life. And when she got to the end, she said, and after 32 years, my husband died. And I looked at the floor, and she said, and oh, the relief. Now, you won't get that anywhere except in real life.
Yes, yes.
So the world has become masculine. It was feminine.
Yes, yes.
And I've also come from a masculine country to a feminine country. Well, you see, England was a small country, full of people. So the movement was outward. And English people went to foreign places from above. And they landed and said, these are the crops you will grow, these are the gods you will worship, now go and do it. It's a very masculine thing to say. America was a huge country with nobody in it. So the movement was inward. And people came from below and they hung on to Mr. Ellis and his horrid little island. And if they were offered work, they said, I'll do it. What is it? Because anything is better than Europe. And that gives America its national characteristic of an eagerness to please, which is very feminine. No, I don't think Americans need bohemianism because they are without class. You can transcend your place and your level of birth. In England, you cannot. That's why we have royalty. The English believe in privilege. The Queen of England is rich, not because she's worked, but because she's privileged. And that lets everybody out. You don't have to work to improve yourself. You can just stay where you are and complain. So you stay where you are and you say, I don't speak right. I don't know anything. My people came from nothing. So I'm working class. But they don't really dislike it. They like it. They revel in it. But they want you to know that they accept the station to which it has pleased God to call them. The aristocracy has a cozy, very condescending friendship with the lower classes. It's the middle class that is the butt of everybody's contempt and hatred. The aristocracy will not allow the middle class to enter its territory. And when it tries, they move on. You see, it's perfectly obvious that the aristocracy adopted a lot of French words, and they called a table napkin a serviette. Then the middle class learned to call it a serviette. So then they called it a table napkin. They're always moving away from what they've been offered. The lower class, of course, doesn't bother with the French because it's difficult to pronounce. So they have a kinship with the aristocracy, who is very condescending but very kind to them. And in Victorian times, it was the duty of the lady of the house to take things like eggs to the cottagers and give them to them. And the cottagers never said, take your filthy eggs away. They accepted them. The nice lady had brought them some eggs. But now, of course, everyone is on edge that they're being condescended to. So it's all very difficult. But in America, there is no class. You can have any kind of accent and no one minds. You can make mistakes of grammar or knowledge or anything, and very few people would correct you, and certainly they wouldn't hold it against you. Well, everyone claims to be middle class in America. Everyone denies they're middle class in England. I went to speak to a lot of lesbians, and I suggested they should write the story of their lives and get it published, and they would be famous. And a woman said, all this writing and reading of books, terribly middle class.
When you get up in the morning, what do you do?
First of all, I scratch myself all over because I have eczema so badly that I'm tortured by it. And then when I've calmed down, I don't wash because I'm told if I wash, it will exacerbate my eczema. So I start to put on, what do I do first? First of all, I put on a minimum of clothes, underclothes and things like that. Then when I've got them on, I start to make up my face, which consists of powdering it very lightly and then putting a minimum amount of rouge on with a brush. Never put on makeup by going like this, because you'll ruin your face. You paint it on. And then I darken my eyelids, and I draw a line across them, and I black my eyelashes, and I darken my eyebrows, and I put on lipstick, and then I put on my outer clothes, my shirt, my scarf, my trousers. I put on my shoes and my teeth last because they hurt most. And then I'm ready. I wear the clothes I've been given. My hat was given me in Rochester, And someone rushed out of a hat shop with this hat, placed it on my head and said, "Wear this." So I wear it. But now I've been instructed I don't wear it as a Westerner would wear a Western hat. So there may be some way in which I convert what I've been given to my own use. Yes, I wear scarves instead of ties, but I don't know why I do it. Oh, this I was given by an Irish woman at Christmas, came with a shopping bag, and she was a sort of Mother Christmas. She took out of the shopping bag, "That's for you, that's for you," and she gave them, it's called a bolo to me. And so I wear it. I wear whatever I've been given. I go out, usually to meet an appointment of someone who has said, "Let's go to lunch." I cannot invite them to lunch because then I would have to pay. So when someone says, "Let's go to lunch," I say yes. No, I've been invited out, so I don't have to pay. And in this way I can have a meal a day. And I used to go to the Cooper Square restaurant, but it shut. And that's very sad because that was very near. That was on 5th Street, and I live on 3rd Street, so I'd only got 4th Street to go across.
When you do nothing, what form does it take?
I sit around in my dressing gown, in my chair. There's only one chair in my room. And I put my feet on the bed. There's only one bed. And I sleep, and I half sleep, and I half wake. And when I think I ought to eat something, I look in the refrigerator, and if there's nothing there, I don't eat. And if there is, people say to me, "Can you cook?" Well, cook is a strong word. I can fry an egg, I can boil a potato, I can open a tin of soup, but I don't cook. And I'm content with that. If you do very little, you eat very little. You see, my popularity is founded entirely on a misunderstanding. In America, I'm some kind of a national hero. But really, I was no such thing. I was a hopeless case. I couldn't have disguised myself as a human being. It would have been impossible. And if I had, people would have said, "Who does he think, oh, I beg your pardon, who does she think she is kidding?" And so I went on in the only way I knew how to go on. And it was considered a gesture. But really, I was stuck with it. I try to take no notice. I try not to lean on it. They asked Betty Davis whether her fame was any good, and she said, "It's useful at airports." And what she meant, I don't know, but I hope she didn't mean she got people turned off airplanes so that she could get on them. But I try never to assume anything. And in that way, I don't make many mistakes, or don't notice that I've made mistakes. But when you're on stage, I suppose you know that you're only there because you're a mini celebrity, and you have to make the most of it. And that's what you do, whether you're a celebrity or not. You'll have to get them to like you.
How do you feel you get people to like you? I'm very curious.
Well, I don't really know. In the same way that I don't know why I'm a mini celebrity. I mean, I'm a man who can be seen to wear makeup. It's not enough. It's so strange. Someone said to me, "Are you famous?" And I said, "I'm famous from Houston Street to 14th Street, because I have lived there for 18 years and I'm not inconspicuous. But how I'm known to other people." A man wrote to me from Orkney, which is an island off the north of Scotland. Where will it all end? So I don't know how people deal with being a celebrity, but I think you mustn't lean on your celebrity. You mustn't assume anything because of it. And that's all I do.
Do you feel when you walk out onto the street that you have to be a public persona?
Oh yes, I can never give up. I'm always ready to be addressed. I'm always in the smiling and nodding racket. If someone speaks to me, I don't say, "What? What'd you say?" I turn and I say, "Good evening, how are you?" And we do it all. And I think that's what people want. There are no stars now because stars were invented. Stars didn't happen, they were created by chiefly Mr. Mayer, who, you see, the 7-year contract, which everyone refers to now with curled lip, because it wasn't really a contract at all. I can renew your contract, you can't decide to stay. But Miss Carr said it created a time and a place for a girl to perfect her skills. And also, which it didn't say, to decide who to be, because the stars couldn't have told you who they thought they were. They just embodied what their creator saw in them, and that they could do. And now there are no creators of stars. In fact, stars are held in contempt. You have to act. See, stars didn't act, they glowed. If you ask yourself, when you see Camille, do I see before me a sentimental French woman who lived with men for money? The answer is no, or even no. You see Garbo. And this is always so. Stars were encouraged to remain constant and to develop their mannerisms to a point of absurdity. That's why there was such a joy to imitators. You see, when you mention Mae West, the whole room starts to undulate and say, "Come up and see me sometime." I mean, she said, "Come up and see me sometime," which anyone could say to anyone. It only becomes the filthiest remark in the world because of the hips and the eyes with the sliding to and fro like the bubble in a spirit gum and all that. And that's what made her a star. She invented herself. Well, I don't understand millennium fever, which seems to have seized everybody. But when I complained about it to a woman, she said, "It'll be just another party." I don't really like parties. I don't think I like jollity. You know, that artificial jumping up and down and shouting and all that. I think people who are naturally happy have no need of festivity. And my life is one long holiday, so I'm not longing for it to be the weekend. I once sat behind 2 girls in an art school, and one of them said to the other, Do you wish it was 4 o'clock? And the girl said, 4 o'clock? I wish it was Friday. So even being in an art school was a penance. She longed for a weekend. But my life is one long weekend. So I don't long for it to be Sunday, and I don't long for it to be Easter, and I don't long for it to be Christmas. But I do appreciate that people want those breaks because their lives are a bit monotonous. I think people won't be alone and won't do nothing because then they can hear time passing. And St. Teresa said she longed to hear the clock strike, because every hour was 1 hour nearer the grave. She would be reunited with you know who.
Yes, yes, yes.
People say to me, well, how would you like to be remembered? What would you like to have written on your tombstone? But the people who say that are the people who think they will lean down from a cloud and count the people at their funeral. I've got news for them. They'll be dead. Well, I find that I'm still alive. Most interesting. And apparently Americans find this too, because I've been here in November. I should have been here 18 years. And I've always been the same, and no one took any notice until I had my 90th birthday. Then they all woke up, as though it was something I'd done. The nice thing about being 90, and almost nothing is nice, is that you long for death. Up till then, you think, I shall die one day, and you're worried or even frightened. But when you're 90, you think it'll come soon, it must come soon. And you're waiting, and you're calm, and you welcome it, and you don't weep, and you're not frightened. And it's nice.
Artifacts is a free oral histories platform. Please like, subscribe, and visit our website, www.artifacts.movie. for an ad-free, interactive experience with bonus content. If you're able, please make a tax-deductible donation at www.artifacts.movie/donate. Hit the link on screen to watch another Artifacts interview.